Sun Tzu said, in the practical art of war, the best thing of all is to take the enemy's country whole and intact. To shatter and destroy it is not so good. So too, it is better to capture an army entire than to destroy it, to capture a regiment, a detachment, or a company entire than to destroy them. Hence, to fight and conquer in all your battles is not supreme excellence. Supreme excellence consists in breaking the enemy's resistance without fighting. Thus, the highest form of generalship is to balk the enemy's plans, the next best is to prevent the junction of the enemy's forces, and the worst policy is to besiege walled cities. The rule is not to besiege walled cities if it can possibly be avoided. The preparation of mantlets, movable shelters, and various implements of war will take up to whole 3 months. And the piling of mounds against the walls will take 3 months more. The general, unable to control his irritation, will launch his men to assault like swarming ants, with the result that 1/3 of his men are slain while the town still remains untaken. Such are the disastrous effects of a siege. Therefore, the skillful leader subdues the enemy's troops without any fighting. He captures their cities without laying siege to them. He overthrows their kingdom without lengthy operations in the field. With his forces intact, he will dispute the mastery of the empire, and thus, without losing a man, his triumph will be complete. This is the method of attacking by stratagem. It is the rule of war, if our forces are 10 to the enemy's 1, to surround him, if 5 to 1, to attack him, if twice as numerous, to divide our army into 2. If equally matched, we can offer battle. If slightly inferior in numbers, we can avoid the enemy, and if quite unequal in every way, we can flee from him. Hence, though an obstinate fight may be made by a small force, in the end it must be captured by the larger force. Now, the general is the bulwark of the state. If the bulwark is complete at all points, the state will be strong. If the bulwark is defective, the state will be weak. There are 3 ways in which a ruler can bring misfortune upon his army. By commanding the army to advance or to retreat, being ignorant of the fact that it cannot obey. This is called hobbling the army. By attempting to govern an army in the same way as he administers a kingdom, being ignorant of the conditions that obtain in an army. This causes restlessness in the soldier's mind. By employing the officers of this army without discrimination, through ignorance of the military principle of adaptation to circumstance. This shakes the confidence of the soldiers. But when the army is restless and distrustful, trouble is sure to come from other feudal princes. This is simply bringing anarchy into the army and flinging victory away. Thus, we may know when there are 5 essentials for victory. He will win who knows when to fight and when not to fight. He will win who knows how to handle both superior and inferior forces. He will win whose army is animated by the same spirit throughout all of its ranks. He will win who prepared himself, waits to take the enemy unprepared. He will win who has military capacity and is not interfered with by the sovereign. Victory lies in the knowledge of these 5 points. Hence the saying, if you know the enemy and you know yourself, you need not fear the result of 100 battles. If you know yourself but not the enemy, for every victory gained you will also suffer a defeat. If you know neither the enemy nor yourself, you will succumb in every battle. That's one of my favorite chapters of the book. There are some critical commentaries in here, both translators' notes and scholars' notes from a more general anthropological perspective, which really do a good job at dissecting the personal constitutional implications of what Sun Tzu says in the book, which I think is a very important thing for all of us to understand, especially of something of the degree of the art of war. Let's see. The only thing I don't like is that this isn't an actively annotated copy. It's got the text, and then you have to flip to another end of the book, essentially, to get to the commentary. Where is it? Chapter 3, verse 4, the rule is not to besiege walled cities if it can possibly be avoided. The preparation of maintenance, movable shelters, and blah, blah, blah. Something, 3 months more. This one actually has 1, 2, 3 notes, which is what inclines me to bring it up. These 3 notes are a mix of both war commentary and translation. 6. Another sound piece of military theory. This is referring to the overall passage. Had the Boers acted upon it in 1899, this is referring to the Boer War of the late 19th century in South Africa, when Dutch settlers were fighting with British settlers over terms of settling and interactions with the natives, and refrained from dissipating their strength before Kimberley, Mafe King, or even Ladysmith. It is more than probable that they would have been masters of the situation before the British were ready to seriously oppose them. The Boers made some disastrous strategy consequences as a result of the fact that they were independent farmers and not really, an organized military force. And they had attacked some pretty well-fortified fortifications of the British, which, ultimately lost the war for them, even despite their manpower advantage. Stay on. The elements against the spirit, no, that's not what I mean. The elements of a combative spirit will attempt to get you in any way they can. Watch out for that. Note 7, it is not clear what insert Chinese character here were. Cao Gong simply defines them as large shields, but we get a better idea from Li Quan, who says that they were to protect the heads of those who were assaulting the city walls at close quarters. This seems to suggest a sort of Roman testudo ready-made. Du Mu says that they were what are now termed wheeled vehicles used in repelling attacks, according to Gang Ji. But this is denied by Chen Hao. See Supra, blah, blah, blah. The name is also applied to turrets on city walls. Of Fen Yun, we get a fairly clear description from several commentators. They were wooden missile-proof structures on 4 wheels propelled from within, covered over with raw hides, and used in sieges to convey parties of men to and from the walls for the purposes of filing up the encircling moat with earth. Du Mu adds that they were now called wooden donkeys. Calthrop wrongly translates the term battering rams. I follow Cao Gong in taking as a verb, coordinate, and synonymous with those commentators who regard as an adjective equivalent to long, make presumably into a noun. And so this is generally saying, if I can find where I put this, this is laying plans. This is essentially saying that the mantlets, movable shelters, and various implements of war were not necessarily those things. There's a lot of looseness in the interpretation of this work because the technology of something century BC China in which Sun Tzu lived, and even the wars of 1 or 2 just 1 millennia later were drastically different, let alone modern war. Modern in the sense of the translators of this time, which was around the 1930s. Or in the modern text, where great mounds or ramparts of earth heaped up to the level of the enemy's walls in order to discover the weak points in the defense, and also destroy the fortified turrets mentioned in the preceding note, which was all that nonsense I just walked you through. Do you quote the Zhou Han Chinese? This is the piling up of mounds part. This is not often later observed in war because more destructive methods were discovered by the Chinese like 3 or 4 or 5 or 6 centuries later in the form of fireworks. and later Ottoman and other probably famous empires. The gunpowder empires, Persia, 12th to 14th century Persia, made heavy utilization of gunpowder weaponry to assault enemy fortifications. Very famously, the siege of Vienna by the Ottoman Empire was they used miners underground, pickaxes and such, to plant barrels of explosives underneath the ramparts of the walls, to blast from underneath them, to weaken the ground, and to collapse them. And this realistically was the only way that they were going to get through these strong brick walls of Vienna, because modern hydraulics did not allow for anything better. And I believe the term is shear force, but like basically, if you just fired cannonballs at it, there was not enough shear force to get it to fall down in this direction. And so having it collapse in on vertical pressure from itself was a much more preferable method of conducting warfare during the Siege of Vienna. Interestingly, the Viennese, the Austrians at that time, presented a counter force with similar capabilities in the form of their own mining teams with demolitions materials, though they were more scarce due to the nature of the conflict at hand. They, of course, couldn't get that many materials in where the Ottomans had clear supply lines, but they still used underground explosives to disrupt Ottoman encampments and to destroy their battlements. Which makes the besieging of walled cities part a lot less applicable in modern warfare than what Sun Tzu suggests. However, in the broader philosophical sense, I suppose it is still necessary for one to not beleaguer yourselves fighting unnecessarily big walls. I think that's all I have to say for today.